According to reports, Homo gautengensis, a toothly, plant-chomping, literal tree swinger that was just named the world's earliest recognized species of human. The new human described in a paper accepted for publication in Homo, Journal of Comparative Human Biology, emerged over 2 million years ago and died out approximately 600,000 years ago. The authors believe it arose earlier than Homo habilis, handyman. Darren Curnow, who led the project, told Discovery News that Homo gautengensis was small-brained and large-toothed. Curnow, an anthropologist at the University of New South Wales School of Biological, Earth and Environmental Sciences, said that it was probably an ecological specialist consuming more vegetable matter than Homo erectus, Homo sapiens, and probably even Homo habilis. It seems to have produced and used stone tools and may even have made fire, since there is evidence for burnt animal bones associated with the human remains. Based on half skulls, multiple jaws, teeth, and other bones discovered at different dates in South Africa's Sturk 14 caves, close to Johannesburg, the new human species was identified. Homo gautengensis, according to Curnow and South African paleoanthropologist Philip Tobias, was slightly over 3 feet tall and weighed about 110 pounds. When on the ground, it used its 2 feet to move around, but Curnow remarked that it probably spent substantial time in trees, perhaps foraging, sleeping, and fleeing predators. The researcher also contend that it lacked language and speech, two traits that today serve to distinguish humans from other animals. The researchers believe that it was close relative of ourselves, but not exactly like us, because of these missing abilities, its anatomy, and its geological age. D. Reuter of Texas A&M University and his colleagues proposed that A. setiba was the transitional species between Homo erectus, also known as upright man, and Australopithecus, a non-human not in our genus. Though A. setiba was much more primitive than H. gautengensis and lived at the same time and in the same place, according to Curnow. The newly discovered human throws a wrench into that theory. As a result, Australopithecus looks even less likely to be an ancestor of humans in light of Homo gautengensis. Australopithecus, discovered in Ethiopia and dating to about 2.5 million years ago, is instead suggested by Curnow as more likely candidate to be the first non-Homo direct ancestor in the human evolutionary line. Because it has the oldest fossil record, dating back roughly 7 million years, Curnow continues to believe that East Africa is where humans first evolved. However, we are now clearly learning that there was much more diversity in our evolutionary tree than we previously realized. The situation we are in today, being alone, is unusual according to Curnow. If we compress all of human evolution into a single year, we have only been alone since the last hour on December 31st, Curnow said. We must clarify why this is. Anthropologist Darren Curnow proposed the name Homo gautengensis in 2010 for fossils of South African hominids that had previously been identified as H. habilis, H. ergaster, or in some cases, Australopithecus, or Paranthropus. If the species is accepted, H. gautengensis could be one of the earliest and longest living species of Homo because the fossils Curnow assigned to the species span a wide temporal range, from roughly 1.8 million years ago to possibly as late as 0.8 million years ago. There hasn't been much acknowledgement of the species since Curnow's 2010 description. Before the species was described, and even now, there is a debate over how to classify the majority of the fossils associated with H. gautengensis. Some paleoanthropologists have even said that there is little justification for classifying H. gautengensis as a legitimate taxon.